All right, so I'm going to give this one last shot for the folks who are still unclear how we arrive at what we arrive at regarding the periods of 7 listed in the Bible. This is actually going to start, obviously, in creation in Genesis 2, where day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6 were creative days, and then God rested on the 7th day from his labors. That was written into the law in Exodus 20. To remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And then there was a reminder in Exodus 20. Let's go there and read the verses. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Exodus 20, verse 8. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and earth and sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So, we have the establishment of a week of days. Now, this is going to be the start of understanding a broader concept as it relates to land sabbaths, but we're going to move from counting days of the week to counting a number of weeks from point A to point B. So what we are actually going to do is go to Leviticus 23 to understand where this pattern, this established period of 7s, is going to evolve into something else. And it's actually the time from the Feast of First Fruits, which is first fruits of the barley harvest, to the Feast of First Fruits of the wheat harvest, which is Pentecost. So, and actually, day 1 isn't. That's why I'm looking at this and I'm like, that's wrong. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, that's better. I'm looking at this and I'm like, that is not right. I love how the Bible double checks itself, because if you have something wrong, it's going to make it really clear when you try to tie that into something else and you're like, yeah, I'm a dummy. Okay, so this is the established pattern. Okay, so from Sunday to Saturday is 1 week. So I'm going to say, this was first fruits. Okay, Feast of First Fruits. Jesus rose on the first day of the week. And in Leviticus 23, it says thus. We're going to start with the verse 9. The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. This is barley. He shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Sabbath. The priest shall wave it. So the morrow after the Sabbath is Sunday. So Jesus rose on the Feast of First Fruits, which is on the first day of the week, the morrow after the Sabbath. So that was the law foreshadowing the day upon which Christ would actually rise as the first fruits of the barley harvest. The meat offering shall be, let's see, etc. I'm going to skip that verse. Verse 14, ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the selfsame day ye have brought an offering unto the Lord. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. And ye shall count unto you, sorry, my Bible's too far away and I'm blind and it's dark. You shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. You shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord. So this is the count from first fruits unto Pentecost, or the Feast of Weeks. It says, ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, so from the Feast of First Fruits on that Sunday, 7 Sabbaths. Okay. So, whoops. I need to not sit in the dark. Okay, went and turned a light on. So, we're going to count off 7 periods of 7 to the morrow after the Sabbath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so even unto the morrow after the Sabbath shall you number 50 days. Okay? So we have 49, and that takes us to Saturday. So we need to count unto the morrow after the next Sabbath, or the morrow after the Sabbath, which is back to Sunday, and there's your period of 50. Okay? But because this is based on a day count of already established weeks, you can't just count this as some isolated year or isolated day. It's part of an already established Sunday through Saturday period of 7. This is where I lose understanding about why people would count the 50th year of the Sabbath for the land as an isolated standalone year. You wouldn't do that with the days. It would be wrong to do that. So here you have weeks or Pentecost. Okay? So you've got your 50 days, and then obviously 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're going to continue after that day to just count your Monday through Saturday as your days 2 through 7. So you're already establishing a pattern, a repeating pattern of 7 days, and you're slotting in first fruits and Pentecost as being 50 days apart. You count 7 sevens, and then the morrow after the Sabbath, which is the 50th day, takes you to the next festival in the cycle. So this is a mini jubilee cycle, a mini period of 50s based on calendar days. And again, based on the way the calendar is structured, you wouldn't just count this 50th day as a separate odd man out and then start the next day, Monday, as day 1 again. So we should already understand this period of 7 when we take it to Leviticus 25 and we have the exact same thing, except it's weeks of years rather than weeks of days. The Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. So you've got your periods of 7. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field and prune thy vineyard, gather in the fruits thereof. But the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard, that which gathereth of its own accord, and of thy harvest thou shalt not sow nor reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine and dress, for it is a year of rest unto the land. Verse 8, and thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years. So exactly what you did for the period of days from first fruits to Pentecost, you're going to do down here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then in the 50th year, hallow it and proclaim Jubilee. But because you're basing the land Sabbaths on the periods of 7, just like the calendar days are based on the periods of 7, you don't just add in an arbitrary year and make it a standalone. The weeks, the periods of 7 are at the core of these prophecies, of these counts. You can't divorce the 7s in favor of the 50s. It doesn't work like that. These are all based on the established periods of 7, which are the weeks, weeks of days and weeks of years. This is why I lose patience with this argument about periods of 50, cycles of 50, where the 50th is a standalone, and then you start the count again from the year after the 50th. That would be your next year 1. That is divorcing from the integrity of the periods of 7 upon which all of this is based. You actually have 3 different prophecies that are based in 7s. You have the days of the week, which are your period of 50 from first fruits to Pentecost, where this Sunday isn't pulled out. It's not a standalone because it's part of an existing period of 7, a week of days. You don't ever break that. That doesn't ever stop. And so we should already know that about this period of 50 based on the 7s for the land. It doesn't ever stop. The 7s, once they're started, don't ever stop. That's the most important thing to read into this, is the 50th year is simply an expanded first fruits to Pentecost count of 50 years rather than 50 days, where the 50th is the first of the next period of 7s. because just like you're using a calendar up here to count days, it is an unbroken period of sevens that repeats from the beginning to whenever you need your end to be. So you're always going to be able to divide by 7 when you are counting jubilees, because it's based on the period of 7. This is why you count by 49s to get to the 50th year. It's current year plus or minus 49. You don't ever count by 50s, you count by 49s. Same here. Pentecost would be 49 days after first fruits. It's an even period of 7 weeks from this Sunday to 7 weeks later Sunday, but it technically is the 50th day. But you would count by 49s to get back to that because you have to count the day that you're on. It's always going to be divisible by 7 because it's predicated upon the cycles of 7. So when you get to Daniel's weeks of years, it's going to be based on these unbroken periods of 7. Now, that doesn't mean that every single one of them started in year 1 of the ongoing cycle, because the cycle is established when Israel comes into their promised land, which is Nisan 10 of presumably 1406. So that starts the count, and you draw out the calendar based on the count from that part. And then when there's a command, you would slot that into the existing count that has already been put in place. You don't just create the count from there. So the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince, those were both the going forth of the commandment and the unto the Messiah the Prince were actually in the 3rd year of their respective weeks of years. But there was an even period of 69 periods of 7 on a 360-day calendar, which you would need to convert to the Gregorian calendar and all of that. That's an entirely separate issue. So that doesn't mean that they would all necessarily start on the 1st year of that week, but they would be on Nisan 10 of whatever year in that week of years they were commanded to be started on, just based on what the existing calendar looked like. The 70th week of years, we know, is going to start on year 1 because it is tied to a jubilee, which is the 50th year of the count, which is the 1st year of a period of 7s. That much we know. So the first 69 weeks of years were not necessarily the same, but we know from other biblical prophecies that the 70th week of years is tied to a jubilee year. The jubilee year is always year 1 of a period of 7s. So the 70th week will be years 1 through 7 of a week of years, again commencing in the jubilee. And then the 3rd prophecy where it uses the periods of 7 is with the overview of world history. Now, there is not a command to begin counting jubilee years from creation, but the years in world history do correspond to a number of jubilee years plus 7 years for the 70th week. However, you have to start the count where you are commanded to count of Sabbath cycles that lead to the declaration of the jubilee, and then count backwards. When you do that and you approximate these, you get somewhere in the vicinity of 6,000 years of world history. It's not exact. I'm not going to go through that. But there is a typology of 7s that exists. It's days of the week, weeks of years, and years in world history. They are all based on the periods of 7, based on the Sabbath. And you can't just start adding arbitrary years, which is why I really, really don't like this whole Dead Sea Scroll calendar, because they start from creation and they insert odd years for the 50th year, like a standalone year, which divorces it from the periods of 7 that it should be based on. There's no command to start from creation. There's a command to start numbering when you come into the land. That's where the Jubilees are established, based on the Sabbath cycles for the land, which start in Nisan 10 of presumably 1406. So that's where you need to start the count. You could presumably take it back to creation, but you do not start at creation. And you do not ever divorce the count from 7s. It's always going to be based on periods of 7, where the 50th year is the 1st year of the next period of 7s, just like the 50th day is the 1st day of that next week of days. These patterns are already well established by the time you get to Leviticus 25. And so there's a couple fundamental errors that people are making with this that are very simple to clear up. It's just whether or not they want to listen. The last thing I will say before I leave this is that every single one of these days of the week starts on Sunday. I know. I originally said Monday. Starts on Sunday. That doesn't change. That doesn't change. You're never going to have, regardless of whether you're in week 10 or 50 or 80 or 500, you are never going to have a different first day of the week. Okay? Down here, these weeks of years always begin on Nisan 10 because that's when Israel came into her promised land. Regardless of whether it's the first year or the 12th year or the 50th year, it's never going to have another start date than Nisan 10 because it's always based on the same cycle. This is a point I want to impress. People need to get it out of their heads that there's some kind of change in what the first day of a jubilee year would be when it is simply the 50th year of an existing cycle. Your birthday, your 50th birthday, is not on any different day than the day that you were born. If you're married for a really long time, your 50th anniversary is not on any day other than the day you got married. And because this is common sense, the 50th year of a week of years is not going to be any other day. The start of that is not going to be any other day than any other week of years, whether it be the 1st or the 80th or the 50th or the 25th. They are always going to start on the same day, which is Nisan 10. This is a common sense argument. It's because we have distorted the meaning of a verse that is totally taken out of context, where people think that the 50th year of an established cycle is going to be the day upon which the 50th year begins is going to be some other day than was established by this pattern, which again is patently false, and common sense says 50th year is simply an anniversary year. Would a 50th anniversary be any other day than the day that you got married? No, it wouldn't. Your anniversary is the same every single year, regardless of how many years you've been married. Your 50th birthday, just like any other birthday, would be the same day because the day that you were born doesn't change. We need to use this common sense in our counts, but we need to start at the beginning and understand that this is a cycle that is simply used multiple times and in different ways, but it still works the same 100% of the time.